how they would react to certain situations. In a sense, they were preloading a response so that, in the moment, they could act quickly without deliberation. The psychologist Peter Gollwitzer has studied the way this preloading affects our behavior. His research shows that when people make advanced mental commitments, if X happens, then I will do Y, they are substantially more likely to act in support of their goals than people who lack those mental plans. Someone who has committed to drink less alcohol, for instance, might resolve, whenever a waiter asks if I want a second drink, I'll ask for sparkling water. And that person is far more likely to turn down the drink than someone else who shares the same goal but has no preloaded plan. Gollwitzer calls these plans implementation intentions, and often the trigger for the plan is as simple as a time and place. When I leave work today, I'm going to drive straight to the gym. The success rate is striking. Setting implementation intentions more than doubled the number of students who turned in a certain assignment on time, doubled the number of women who performed breast self-exams in a certain month, and cut by half the recovery time required by patients who had received hip or knee replacement, among many other examples. There is power in preloading a response. This preloading is what's often missing in organizational situations that require courage. A colleague or client belittles someone, or makes an off-color remark, or suggests something unethical, and we're so taken aback that we do nothing. 10 minutes later, we curse ourselves for not acting. We missed our chance. These missed opportunities made Mary Gentile reconsider the way we teach ethics in schools. Gentile, a professor at the University of Virginia Darden School of Business, realized that ethics education was dominated by the question, what is the right thing to do? But people often know what the right thing to do is. The hard part is acting on that judgment. We can all generate a list of what makes this hard to do, Gentile said. We feel alone. We wonder if we're being naive. We wonder if we're misinformed, or we want to believe that perhaps we are. We wonder if our boss will be receptive. We anticipate that we will encounter pushback. If we raise the issue and we don't know what we'll say when that happens, we worry about being ostracized, or worse if we appear not to be a team player. She became convinced that ethics education should focus not on what is the right thing to do, but rather on how can I get the right thing done? She created a curriculum called Giving Voice to Values, which has been used in more than 1,000 schools and organizations. The heart of her strategy is practice. You identify situations where an ethical issue might arise. You anticipate the rationalizations you'll hear for the behavior. Then you literally script out your possible response or action. And finally, you practice that response with peers. Leaders who want to instill an ethical business culture and not just mouth the words of a toothless statement of values will take inspiration from Gentile and make practice a priority. Because the situations that lead to unethical behavior are predictable. Relentless pressure for results, coupled with avert the eyes management, will lead to cut corners or outright fraud, think banking scandals. Blurry lines of accountability, plus get things done urgency, will lead to accidents, think cataclysmic oil spills. A leader's bias or bigotry or sexism, taking root in a permissive environment, will inevitably lead to abuse. These are not anomalies. They are probabilities. They can be foreseen and fought. Just as an athlete practices his or her moves to commit them to muscle memory, the point here is to make voicing our values the default position, said Gentile. 3. At the seminary at Yeshiva University, students role-played difficult situations with actors, modeling the crises they might face as a rabbi dealing with congregants. As reported by Paul Vitello in the New York Times, the situations they rehearsed are complex and emotional, talking with a suicidal teenager, comforting an elderly woman frustrated with the indignities and invisibility of old age, counseling a victim of childhood sexual abuse, telling a man his wife had died of an aneurysm while visiting the synagogue. That last scenario was presented to the 24-year-old student Benjamin Haubin. Here's how Vitello describes the scene. To prepare for the scene, Haubin paused outside the room, trying to conjure the feeling of death. He entered the classroom, wearing a look of grief that he hoped would telegraph what he was about to say. But the actor was not about to make the job easier. He waited to be told. Then he went to pieces with great skill, said Mr. Haubin, whose face seemed to sag just retelling the scene. The lessons he learned from the simulation, he said, were these. People may not believe you when you tell them. It may take a long time for them to absorb a shock. And after that, it only gets worse. Originally, in the role-playing exercises, there were no actors. The students role-played with each other. But there was a problem. It wasn't real enough, said Rabbi Menachem Penner, the dean of the seminary. It was instructional, but not experiential. It was the difference between reading something in a book and living through it. The actors created the level of tension that really made it valuable. A crucial feature of practicing courage, then, is making sure the practice requires courage. In the Nashville rehearsals, James Lawson's Confederates cursed at the student protesters, mocked them, shoved them, and Rabbi Penner's seminary students must confront congregants who scream and cry and break down. In the back of their minds, the students know it's not real, but the moment feels real. The students gain confidence from rehearsing such fraught and delicate conversations. We've found that when students practice, even for one session, it makes them so much calmer and more prepared when they have to do it in real life, said Rabbi Penner. It takes courage to offer counsel in such traumatic situations, and that courage is strengthened with practice. In most organizations, employees won't be called on to deal with situations this grave, but at some point everyone will face an anxiety-making conversation. How do you stand up to a dictatorial boss? How do you say no to an important customer? How do you fire an employee who might lash out? How do you lay off a loyal employee whose role is no longer needed? Every industry has its own unique set of emotional encounters. An airline desk agent who must help an irate passenger who's missed his connecting flight by 90 seconds. A teacher who must tell a student's parents that their child is behaving badly. A financial advisor who must inform an elderly widow she's lost a fifth of her nest egg because of a stock market correction. Practice quiets the anxiety that can cloud our mind in a tough moment. When we lack practice, our good intentions often falter. As an example, take the anti-drug program DARE. Drug Abuse Resistance Education, launched in 1983, which invites police officers into schools to inform students about the harms of drugs and to encourage a drug-free lifestyle. It's an admirable and well-intentioned intervention, and it's popular. It's the most widely used drug prevention program in the United States. But the evidence from several studies is clear. It doesn't work. One meta-analysis found that teens enrolled in DARE were just as likely to use drugs as those who weren't. Why doesn't DARE work? Clues about the program's flaws can be found in the work of Pim Quichbers, who studied what made anti-drug programs successful. Quichbers' research had led to a simple conclusion. Programs that reduce drug use employ interactive methods, while ineffective programs don't. In other words, to resist drugs, students need the opportunity to practice courage. The hard part isn't knowing what the right thing to do is. The hard part is doing it. There will come a time at a party when a 16-year-old is offered alcohol or marijuana. If they haven't rehearsed what they'll do or say in that moment, they are likely to feel their resolve crumble. What teens may not realize is that if they resist drugs or alcohol, they will make it easier for others to resist, too. An act of courage can bolster the resolve of others. One executive gave us an example of how he acts on this insight in his business. When we have meetings, I typically have a plant in the audience and give them a tough question to ask, he said. It's always a question we know people are asking and talking about, but afraid to actually bring to leadership. I do this to pop the cork and show that it's safe. He's right to be concerned about people staying silent. One study found that 85% of workers felt unable to raise an issue or concern to their bosses, even though they felt the issue was important. His solution, the Confederate with a tough question, is well supported by evidence. There's a classic study conducted by Charlene Nemeth and Cynthia Childs, demonstrating that one act of courage supports another. Let's say you are a participant in the study. You are matched with 3 other people, and a researcher shows your group a series of 20 slides. After each one is presented, the researcher pauses to ask each of you what color the slide is. It's an easy task. All the slides are blue, and all 4 of you say blue, all 20 times you're asked. Then, that group breaks up and you are put into a new group of 4. Same task. This time, though, the first slide is red. Oddly, all 3 of your groupmates call it orange. What will you call it? It certainly looks red, but could you be wrong? This happens 19 more times. Your groupmates always call the slides orange, and each time, everyone looks at you to hear your answer. If you think you would stay strong in this situation, you might be right, but you'd be in the minority. Most people in the study caved. On average, they called 14 of the 20 red slides orange, conforming to the majority's incorrect view. The 3 people in the group who claimed all the red slides were orange were, as you might have guessed, Confederates of the researchers. Another set of participants were ushered through the sequence above, but with one crucial difference. This time, the researchers also added a Confederate to the first group, the one viewing blue slides. He was instructed to call all the blue sides green. Let's call him the brave but wrong guy. The other 3 normal participants were probably puzzled by his seeming colorblindness, but they easily stuck to their guns, calling all the blue slides blue. The striking change came in the second group. The participants were shown the red slides, and as described above, the 3 Confederates continually called them orange. This time, though, the participants stayed strong. They defied the majority, labeling 17 out of 20 slides, on average, as red. Note that they were brave even though they hadn't practiced courage themselves. They'd only witnessed it. Brave, but wrong guy was willing to speak up for himself even though he was mistaken about the color. That act of dissent bolstered the other participants' resolve. As the researchers wrote, exposure to a dissenting minority view, even when that view is in error, contributes to independence. The bad news here is that our natural instinct is to cave to the majority opinion. If everyone says the red card is orange, we think we must be wrong, and we call it orange too. The good news is that if even one person is brave enough to defy the majority, we are emboldened. We're not alone anymore. We're not crazy. And we feel we can call red red. In short, courage is contagious. From historic protests to everyday acts, from the civil rights movement to an employee asking a tough question, this is the lesson we've learned. It is hard to be courageous, but it's easier when you've practiced, and when you stand up, others will join you. Think of it. Your moment of courage might be a defining moment for someone else. A signal to them that red is red, that wrong is wrong, and that it can be righted if we stand together against it. Moments of pride. The Whirlwind Review. Moments of pride commemorate people's achievements. We feel our chest puff out and our chin lift. There are 3 practical principles we can use to create more moments of pride. 1. Recognize others. 2. Multiply meaningful milestones. 3. Practice courage. The first principle creates defining moments for others. The latter 2 allow us to create defining moments for ourselves. We dramatically underinvest in recognition. Researcher Wiley. 80% of supervisors say they frequently express appreciation, while less than 20% of employees agree. Effective recognition is personal, not programmatic. Employee of the Month doesn't cut it. Reisinger at Eli Lilly used tailored rewards, e.g., Bose headphones, to show his team, "I saw what you did and I appreciate it." Recognition is characterized by a disjunction. A small investment of effort yields a huge reward for the recipient. Kira Sloop, the middle school student, had her life changed by a music teacher who told her that her voice was beautiful. To create moments of pride for ourselves, we should multiply meaningful milestones, reframing a long journey so that it features many finish lines. The author Cam planned ways to level up. For instance, learn how to play concerning hobbits from the Fellowship of the Ring, toward his long-term goal of mastering the fiddle. We can also surface milestones that would have gone unnoticed. What if every member of a youth sports team got a before and after video of their progress? Number-heavy organizational goals are fine as tools of accountability, but smart leaders surface more motivational milestones en route to the target. Moments when we display courage make us proud. We never know when courage will be demanded, but we can practice to ensure we're ready. The protesters involved in the Nashville lunch counter sit-ins didn't just show courage, they rehearsed it. Practicing courage lets us preload our responses. Gentile's approach to ethics says we usually know what is right, but don't know how to act. Courage is contagious. Our moments of action can be a defining moment for others. Clinic 4. Boss has flash of insight. I'm a jerk. The situation. The CFO of a company, let's call him Mark, has just reviewed the results of his 360 feedback. The results are not good. Mark knows that he is not well loved in the company. He prides himself on being a tell-it-like-it-is manager. Leadership is not a popularity contest, he'll say. Even so, he is shocked by the feedback. People don't see him as a no-nonsense leader. They see him as a total jerk. He rarely listens, they said. He interrupts people frequently to insert his own views. He is dismissive of other people's opinions. And he never apologizes or admits mistakes. One quote in particular stings him. Mark is currently the only C-level executive in this firm who has no hope of being CEO, for the simple reason that being CEO is the ultimate leadership role, and no one would follow Mark. The desire. Mark has tripped over the truth. The 360 feedback provided a 1 clear insight, 2 compressed in time, and 3 discovered by the audience itself, that is, him. The defensiveness he felt when he first started reading the feedback — this is just sour grapes from jealous colleagues — had crumbled by the end. He realizes his colleagues are right. He's been acting like a jerk. And he sees, too, that he has no hope of becoming a CEO at his company or anywhere else until he fixes himself. So he'll change. But how? How do we create a defining moment? What's the moment? There's no natural moment here, and that's part of the problem. The famous executive coach Marshall Goldsmith said that some of his clients do succeed in reforming their bad behavior, but no one notices. His clients had already imprinted themselves on their colleagues as jerks. So Goldsmith learned to press his clients to set up a meeting with their colleagues at which they would apologize for their behavior, promise to change, and ask their colleagues' help to do so. Taking a cue from Goldsmith, Mark schedules a meeting where he does exactly that. That's a defining moment. It marks a transition from the old me to the new me. Add elevation. 1. Mark's meeting is not a peak. There's not much positive emotion involved. Nevertheless, the raw confessional nature of the meeting, A, raises the stakes, and B, breaks the script, which are 2 of the 3 traits of a moment of elevation. Add insight. 1. Trip over the truth. The key moment of insight here is Mark's receipt of the 360 feedback that is the first defining moment that leads to a second, the meeting. 2. Stretch for insight. The heart of the meeting is Mark's promise to reinvent himself. That's a risk for him. He wants to change, but doesn't know if he's capable of it. And frankly, his colleagues are skeptical. Whether he succeeds or not, he will learn something about himself. Add pride. 1. Mark should take pride in the meeting itself. It takes courage to hold himself accountable for his own bad behavior. Beyond the meeting, he can lay the groundwork for future moments of pride. 2. Practice courage. Even as Mark asks for his colleagues' help, he knows it will be hard for them to speak up. It's hard to call someone a jerk to his face. Imagine if Mark equips his colleagues with a language of criticism. I called you together today because I want this to be the moment when I stop acting like old Mark the jerk who doesn't listen and start acting like new Mark. I'm going to try my hardest, but if you catch me acting like old Mark, I'd really appreciate you calling me out. Why would that language help? Recall Mary Gentile's research about ethically troubling situations. Her contention is that what's hard about being courageous is not knowing what to do, but rather knowing how to respond. Because of that, it's useful to preload our responses, so we'll be ready in the moment. With the old Mark/new Mark language, he is helping his colleagues preload their responses to the moments when he slips into his old behavior. Hat tip to Tasha Eurich for this idea. 3. Multiply milestones. Imagine if Mark sets a goal that he wants to take part in 10 meetings in a row without interrupting anyone and asks his colleagues to police him. That might be a way to introduce some playfulness to an otherwise fraught situation, and if he hits the goal, it would be a moment well worth celebrating. Add connection. 1. Deepen ties. Mark's meeting is a great example of showing vulnerability, which is a prerequisite to intimacy. When his colleagues see him lowering his guard, it allows them to see him as a human being with flaws, not a wholesale jerk. 2. Create shared meaning. The meeting provides a synchronizing moment. All his colleagues witness it together. It sharpens the demarcation point and reinforces the seriousness of Mark's pledge. Final reflections. The key insight here is that an unpopular leader needs to create a moment. As Goldsmith says, even if a leader successfully changes his behavior, it might not fix his relationship problems because his colleagues might not notice. The moment creates a reset point. Moments of elevation. Moments of insight. Moments of pride. Moments of connection. Clients, teachers and parents, doctors and patients will also encounter the seemingly unthinkable. Strangers who become fast friends in 45 minutes as a result of following a carefully structured series of questions, which you can download for yourself. In this final part of the framework, we'll study the unforgettable moments that connect us together.